All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. I am so excited about the webinar that we have planned for you because we've got two amazing people that are joining us. We got Chip, who's coming in to speak today on AI. We've got Steve, who's going to be moderating. And then, of course, we have all of you who are taking the time to learn about this important topic. And I definitely want to make sure that you ask your questions. So be sure to put those in the Q&A box or the chat box, and Steve will keep an eye on them and we'll kind of ask your questions throughout the webinar. We'll have a couple breaks because I do want you to meet all of my friends over at On Point Legal Nurse Consulting, Fox AE, Strategic, as well as HMR. And of course, if you have any questions or anything, I'll be here in case you need me as well. But I want to go ahead and get started because we have so much that we're going to be covering. And for those of you who do not know, my dear friend Steve, he is recognized as one of the nation's top attorneys that handles a lot of serious auto accident, injury, and wrongful death cases. And he is always a Michigan Trial Lawyer of the Year, and he's been voted among the top five, if not number one, attorney in Michigan in the category of plaintiff personal injury. And he's always one of those top 50 lawyers in the entire state out of 65,000 plus super lawyers. He is the head of the Michigan Auto Law, which is the state's largest law firm focusing on car, truck, motorcycle accident, as well as injury cases. You guys have probably seen me constantly invite him to speak at a lot of our seminars on trucking cases and auto cases and even traumatic brain injury. He's been a past chair of the AAJ Traumatic Brain Injury Litigation Group, as well as a past chair of the AAJ Trucking Litigation Group. He's a past president of the Motor Vehicle Trial Lawyers Association, as well as a past president of the Bell Eye Society, which I was just telling him has been one of my favorite organizations to know and work with. And then also he's worked with the AAJ Distracted Driving Litigation Group, and he's recovered the largest reported auto and trucking settlement in Michigan history. He's recovered a lot of these top trial verdicts and settlements for a lot of auto and truck wreck cases in the state over multiple years. And we are so excited because he does a lot of lecturing and teaching throughout the country on trial advocacy litigation when it comes to trucking as well as traumatic brain injury. And I'm so proud of Steve because he now has, I think, over six locations across the country, most recently now in Los Angeles. And we're just so proud of you, Steve, and the good work that you do and all the people that you help. And we're honored to have you today as our moderator.
Thank you, Ginger, and so honored to be here. That was the nicest, greatest introduction I've ever received for being a moderator of a webinar. So really appreciate it. I'm not worthy. I'm just the guy introducing the speaker that everyone is here to learn from. Um, I am Steve Gursten. I will be your humble moderator today. Very honored again. Thank you, Ginger. Let me very quickly say a few words about Chip LaFleur. Um, Chip is a fellow Michigander. I know him personally. I have worked with him personally. He has been an amazing help to me and a wonderful consultant through the years now. Um, the the Probably the most important thing I can say to the attendees is he's honest. Chip is different. He's really upfront. He's really honest. I really value his advice through the years, and I am very excited, obviously, to learn from him today. AI is going to be our future, and it's either adapt or perish. So I don't want to take up any more of Chip's time, except to just say that we're lucky to have him. And Chip, I'm really excited to learn from you as well. So, to the people listening, I will do my very best to try to make sure all of your questions get answered. Please put them in the Q&A box. And looking forward to a great webinar today.
Thank you so much, Steve. Thank you, Ginger. I appreciate it. You're far too kind. I always feel like when anytime I've ever gone after Steve, I should just jump in and say, and also I'm Chip. And then I can launch in and we could get right to it. But I'm honored to be here, and I was so happy, Steve, that you were able to moderate this. This is really fun.
My pleasure.
we're going to jump in and we're going to go through and kind of start with the deck here for just to kind of set the stage a little bit, just to kind of cover some terminology, um, so that we can get into the deeper parts of this later. And I wanted to do this from as much of a platform agnostic perspective as we could, because I think that there's a real value in understanding what ChatGPT, AI in general can do um, as a platform before we start looking at what the different services are, what the different platforms are that you can layer on top. Most of the platforms and most of the products and vendors that are out there that are AI vendors or built on AI, they're still built on the same technology, these large language models. But AI has not been AI is not a new thing. There have been machine learning models. There have been predictive analytics for quite a few years. Going back when I first started this company about 10 years ago, we were working with machine learning models and trying to come up with ways to make predictions. And those models were very good. And so this latest iteration of GPTs and large language models, that's the current iteration of AI, but it's been around for a while. And so all of this is building on. And so um, as we've gotten into what's available and what's out there, we want to cover, first of all, how it can empower you, right? How are these tools available for you to use? How do we get you into them so that they are less theoretical and more practical? And then how do we use those base models? How do we use ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini? How do we use those models to try to start to solve our problems? And behind those models, there's a lot of depth and a lot of services. We'll spend most of our time in ChatGPT, but just remember that these concepts are applicable across Claude and across Gemini, especially, and some of the others as well. And then if you want to dig deeper, we can dig a little bit deeper as well and talk about local models and some of the things that you can do. I've talked to firms that are doing really amazing things with local models. And the nice thing about local models is that bypasses some of the requirements around, it doesn't bypass, but it's a good solution for things like HIPAA, and privacy matters. So we're going to talk about how we can make your work faster, more creative. Multilingual is a great one. And then we're going to try to leave you with some tools and workflows that you can use in your own practice. We'll also cover some things that get a little bit more into the developer side of things, just things that I want you to be aware of that you can know that can be done, whether or not they're things that you're going to start to roll out and build in the first place. So again, taking a step back, generative AI is kind of the latest iteration of something that's been building for quite a few years, 20, 30 plus years. And it's artificial intelligence built on this huge library of information, most of the public internet, with some special attention paid to sites like Quora, Reddit, really informed a lot of kind of those initial models. And unlike a human, it doesn't think in terms of thoughts. It really operates in more of this predictive model in trying to predict what is the next word, what's the next phrase that's going to make the most sense to the user. And so it's built around that user. The user provides an input, which is usually a prompt, but there's other ways that they can do that too by providing images, voice, things like that. But it doesn't think like a human and it doesn't have empathy like a human. I always call it like our little friendly sociopath, because it doesn't have real empathy, but it fakes it really well. It seeks to please because you're the one who's paying for it. But because of that, we also have to be really careful about the biases that it brings that are inherent in the system. It can help you do things like draft documents, summarize case files, generate multilingual communications. Very good at some of those things. Of course, there's some privacy matters that we want to cover when we use it for those things as well. It has great potential. It has real risks. I'm always a little bit conflicted in that I love AI and I love technology and I love building with tools, but there's also, of course, societal challenges that we're going to have to face as this comes along. So some reasons to use it: save time, of course, cover more ground than we were able to before, boost creativity, get yourself out of the weeds of trying to make something and get more into that director seat of trying to point it where it wants to go. Reduces cost. Again, this is one of the things that I think we're going to have to figure out how to manage. It can free your team up. It can help you get more things done with the team that you have, and it can really create some efficiencies there. It also helps you reach more people. So ChatGPT and others, they're very good translators. Unlike the previous generation of Google Translate, they would get things wrong. ChatGPT tends to get that nuance a lot more effectively in any of the LLMs. It also encourages continuous learning and innovation. Once you start playing with these platforms, you realize that there's really little risk in what you can play with. You can't ask a silly question, and that can really help people learn very quickly, and not just in the legal field. Um, we've worked with students before who are struggling in an area, and then they turn to ChatGPT and they use that to get up to and ahead of the rest of the class because it helps them to learn in ways that really are unique to them. Now, when I think of ChatGPT and other LLMs, I think of purpose and context, first of all, in the way that I interact with them. An LLM or chat interface is going to be most effective when it knows what it's meant to do, what you want from it, and when it has enough context around the request to be able to fulfill that. And so if you can frame what you're trying to do with your GPT in that way first, just mentally wrap your head around that, then you can start to really prepare it to help you get a better answer. And that theme is going to continue to populate kind of as we go through these slides. So a lot of attention gets given to prompt writing. I'm not going to spend too much time here. If we think back to that purpose and context, the prompt just needs to deliver the purpose and context effectively. And there's some ways that can help us to do that that go outside of that prompt. Personally, I don't spend a ton of time prompt engineering or I guess prompt engineering is just a fancier way of saying writing a prompt. Um, there's ways to really dive deeply in this. People will have spreadsheets full of prompts. I find that there's a little bit better way to kind of give that purpose and context to your GPT. When you're just having a conversation with the chat by itself without using a project or a custom GPT, then it becomes more important to write a good prompt. But we still want to be specific. We want to provide context, define a persona, and specify the format of what we want from the outcome. And here again, more specific is better. The more context and detail that we provide, the more effective it's going to be in its response. And the third one, you notice that we're saying, what questions do you have for me? You'll encounter when you use ChatGPT or the others in the wild, you'll encounter different scenarios where it will push back and ask you further questions. Take that time to answer those. It will inevitably give you better answers, but also take the time to push it to ask, right? If you say, hey, I want to create a marketing presentation, or I want to create a presentation for a conference I'm coming up to, what questions can I answer to help you do a better job? The more it understands, the better it's going to be at doing that. A quick touch on privacy and security. Anytime that we release something to a web service, we're releasing it outside of our control and it could be used for incorrect purposes. With ChatGPT, Claude, and all of the other ones, it also has a layer of privacy that we can toggle on and off for the most part. Usually if we have an enterprise level or a Teams level platform, then the switch to train the model is going to be turned off. But it's kind of a unique privacy issue to GPTs and to chats. Whereas in the past, we may say, hey, don't use our data. And that would mean that don't advertise using our data, don't release our contact information. This one's a little bit different. If we leave that toggled in the wrong way, then it's actually going to use our feedback to train the model. And it's going to try to anonymize that and minimize the issues related to sharing private information, but it's not going to be perfect. So in the paid tiers, we'll go through this in the demo, but make sure that is turned off. And of course, always avoid sharing social security numbers, health info, personally identifying information, even if you have that setting turned to the correct way. Next, we'll talk a little bit about projects. And again, we'll demonstrate all of this, but projects in ChatGPT and in Claude are areas where we can go in and we can start to build out more of that context, especially, but also give a little purpose. And this is for things where we're going to repeat and go in and use again and again. So for example, if you are someone who tends to give a lot of presentations, say you give presentations on TBI, you could build a project for helping you manage those. And in that project, you're going to give it some background, you can give it some files, and it's going to much better understand the output that you're looking for. And you'll be able to lead in with less effort put into each individual chat or each individual prompt. We're going to cover custom GPTs as well. If you've logged into ChatGPT, you'll see them on the left. It says GPTs. That may be empty, or you may have tried and used some publicly available over there. I think these are called gems in Gemini, but they're areas where you can kind of customize the functionality. They're a little bit different than projects, but I'll show you the differences. One of the bigger differences here, though, is that you can share custom GPTs internally or externally. But if you share them externally, again, you want to be very careful to make sure that you are not including confidential information in the files or in the instructions, because an external user can then use them. Next, we'll spend some time talking about what vector stores are. Vector stores are like buckets of files, and they can have any number of files. Usually with OpenAI specifically, the cap is about 10,000 files. Some other platforms like Pinecone and some others that are on the market can take more than that. But this creates a relationship among those files, almost like a mind map. And it takes the ideas from these files and connects them to other aligned ideas throughout them. And then it builds an index off of that very, very quickly. And it allows you to query that index. It allows you to ask it questions. And it makes it feel like it has access to a wealth of information to the whole bucket of information, as opposed to what you can load up, 10 or 20 files in a custom GPT or in a project. But again, this serves to provide that GPT with the context that it needs to try to help you answer your question or give you a good response. And then getting into Agent Builder, this is intended to help you see what's possible. Again, just using the platform, just using the platforms that you can get through ChatGPT or Claude or similar. So Agent Builder allows us to string together agents and then host them in our own platform. Lets us use those different pieces like vector stores and plug them in one after the other so that each one can have its own purpose. So just circling back on privacy, make sure that you have that turned off. We'll cover that next. This is the end of the deck here. We'll jump into the live demos. So I'll show you that first. Fact check and verify. The human in the loop part can't be understated. GPTs will hallucinate and they'll tell you things that are just completely untrue. Some will do a much worse job than others. Sometimes it depends on the day. One of the challenges with ChatGPT 5 when that came out is OpenAI gave us 5, but then decides whether we get more compute or less, depending on the time of day and demand. And so while we might use a GPT and it functions really well, we start to build a trust. The next day we can be on there when everyone else is asking a bunch of hard questions, and its quality can go south very quickly. And then also there's a cultural bias that's inherent. ChatGPT and others, these large language models, they've been built on the content of the internet. And so they are a summation of all of that content. So there's going to be some bias built in. And then also when you think about it, the goal and the purpose of choosing that next right word is to make the user happy. Well, if its goal is to do that, it may tell us things that are false, and it may mislead us. So we want to be careful there too.
Chip, can I ask you a quick question?
Yeah, of course.
So when you were talking about vector stores, I'm wondering, I'm hearing more and more about people, especially people that publish and write quite a bit of content, that are creating their own AI personas where they're
Mm-hmm.
essentially uploading everything they've ever written. Scott Galloway from the Prof G podcast was recently talking about the one he was building. Is that using vector stores to basically create that giant database and then having an AI persona that would be asking or answering questions based on everything you've ever written and the store of knowledge that you've produced?
Most likely, yes.
Okay,
Yep. And I'll show you what that looks like. I'll show you how you can go in and kind of get that set up. I think there's a lot of use cases for that as well. So the answer is most likely.
gotcha. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. So step one, I'll show you in ChatGPT, but the interface is very similar in Claude and in Gemini. Those are kind of the three that I lean towards the most. They tend to have kind of the most balanced responses. But signing in, first of all, to ChatGPT, and keep in mind, ChatGPT and OpenAI they're not the same thing. OpenAI owns ChatGPT, but it's a product. We'll talk a little bit more about OpenAI and some of the things we can do there. But step one, get signed in, go to your username down here, go to settings, and then here under data controls, this is the setting that we want to make sure is turned off. I'm in a Teams account, which is like an enterprise account, and I can't turn this on. And I think this is one of the main reasons to get a paid company account for everyone who's going to use ChatGPT. I've talked to a lot of attorneys who who say, hey, look, if you want to use ChatGPT, you're an attorney, you pay for it yourself, get your own personal, get a plus or pro. I would suggest that you not do that. It's $30 a month for a Teams account per user per seat. And as we get in, and I'll start showing you some of these other things we can do, you want to have good data security around all of your accounts. You want to keep your files protected. I'm sure you have security policies and processes in place. As soon as you offer to someone, or as soon as you allow someone to use a personal and private instance of ChatGPT or Claude or anything else, you're bypassing that. And so, one, make sure this is turned off. If you're on a free account, I'm not sure if you can turn this off. If you're on a plus or pro, you can. So turn that off. And then two, when you look at your account, just try to get a Teams account if it's in ChatGPT. Try to get an enterprise account um, in Gemini or in Claude, because you're really creating this library of knowledge in ChatGPT, and that's tied to the chat histories, the files, and the instructions that you build in there. And just like you wouldn't want someone to run off with your SharePoint data or case files, you don't want them to run off with their own GPTs either. Those should be in service of the firm that the person works in, just like anything else. So start by turning that off. The next thing that we want to touch on, actually, before I exit out of there, the next thing that I like to do in mine is I like to go to apps and connectors. So we're still in settings, go to apps and connectors, and you'll see that I have a bunch of connectors enabled. Some of the most important ones here for me, SharePoint, Outlook email, Outlook calendar. And what these allow me to do is these allow me to open up those resources to ChatGPT so that ChatGPT can index them and then use them in responses. And this is one of the things that I think really unlocks a ton of usability. And so now that I have those opened up, I can go in here and I can say, help me prep for my day tomorrow. I hit this plus here and I could say use connectors. And when I turn on these connectors, I can go to my Outlook calendar, I can go to my Outlook email, SharePoint if I want, and I can hit submit. And now my chat is not just informed from what ChatGPT happens to know about me, which it wouldn't understand what I have going on in my email, wouldn't understand what I have in my calendar. It's able to go through and it says, okay, here's a daily brief for you for tomorrow. I think we're doing volunteer work in the morning. Um, so this will give me a run through to say, okay, here's what you have going on. Here's what you need to deal with. So this will run through that. While that's doing that, I'm going to give you another example. If we want to do a deeper dive, we could do that in here as well. And again, we're just at the new chat interface. And so here I want to do what's called a deep research. And I don't know, Steve, do you have anything you'd want to do a little bit more deep research on? What's a problem you're trying to solve? Let me rephrase.
Which ones?
What's the biggest problem that you're trying to solve in your daily life?
All right. How about will um, when will level five autonomous vehicles start putting car accident lawyers out of business?
When we do a deep research, We could turn on and off these connectors as well. But deep research requires a pretty significant amount of compute. And so it's going to generally ask you these follow-up questions because it doesn't want to expend that energy, that effort until it gets some answers. So to give you a forward-looking answer, clarify what region market. So I just copy and paste these. Forecast for the deployment timeline. Yes. The projected impact on personal. Yes. And I'm going to say yes to all of those. Now this is going to run through, and because we have these connectors turned on, this is going to go through and this is going to look through email, through my SharePoint, as well as all the others. But most of where this one is going to go is this one's going to go online and use search. And so flipping back over to my day prep plan. Now this didn't take nearly as much time. I'm going to let this just run while we continue talking. Um, it even talks like I do. It's a no BS game plan. I'll take that. Um, we've got volunteering in the morning. I've got some meeting prep for the volunteer shift. I've got a truck wreck justice call. Here's some of the other things that came up. So now I've got a great plan for the week. I can continue to interact with this, right? I can ask it to, because it has these connectors, I can say, help me prep for my meeting. Let me find one here. Help me prep for my meeting with Mary Freebet. It's going to do that research and it's going to actually help me plan for that meeting. It will help me write my agendas. It will help me pull things. It will help me pull all the email communications that I may have had, any notes that I may have had. If you're using an AI note taker, I really like Circleback. I think it's one of the better. If you're using something like that, it puts your meeting notes in your inbox. So it's going to scan through all of those and it's going to give you a pretty outstanding output. Now, this autonomous vehicle question, this is going to take a little while, so we'll circle back on this as we move along. But making sure that those connectors are in place, that really gets it plugged into the systems that you use to help solve your problems right away. The next thing I want to cover is projects. So we're going to talk about projects, but we're going to talk about custom GPTs first. Projects and custom GPTs are quite similar to each other. Custom GPTs in our window, new chat search, etc. GPTs we can explore. We can find these here. We'll circle back on these in a minute. Projects live below that. And we can make a new project. We give it a name. It's going to suggest Copenhagen trip. We can pick from these things here. I normally just create my own from scratch. But I have a LaFleur leadership project that I use all the time because I've given it some purpose and I've given it some context of how I want to interact with it. So when I make a new project, first I want to create instructions for this project. I want to give it purpose. And so this purpose of this project is to reflect our values. And it's to help me as the CEO at LaFleur Marketing to do a good job. It knows who's on my leadership team. It knows what we do. It knows some of our specific initiatives. It knows some of our products and our offering. So I create that. And again, if I'm making a new one, I just add that as the instructions. And then next I add files to this project. And I think the limit in projects is about 10 files. And so we've got our annual goals, we've got our mission, vision, values. Every question that I ask here, I don't need to restate all of this. And so for me, my projects tend to reflect the things that I'm doing in my life, right? And so my wife and I like to restore antiques and collect some old signs and things like that. I have this one here. The instructions are, hey, tell me what the valuation of this is. Tell me if it's real or fake. I coach my kids' soccer team. I don't know how to coach a soccer team. So I have a project here and it understands, I didn't add files, but on this one, it understands the purpose and where I'm going. I can still add files. I can still have a chat just like I can with other things. I can get mad at it, which I do all the time. I swear at ChatGPT constantly when it doesn't get things right. And it's okay because it doesn't have any feelings and I don't have to feel bad about it.
Yeah, quick question, if you don't mind. I was
Please.
using projects just earlier this morning, coincidentally, and I'm pretty sure ChatGPT, maybe it was the size of the file that I was working on, but it was telling me I had to, it was suggesting that I go to Dropbox to
Yep.
and then import it from Dropbox back into the projects folder.
Yep.
Is that normal or was I using it wrong? Is there a way to directly import it right from ChatGPT and populate the folder?
So I mean, yes, but to your point, I think it was probably too big.
Okay.
So when I go here and add files, it's only going to take something up to a certain size. Um, and so when you think about what ChatGPT or what OpenAI is undertaking in providing this service, if they have millions of users and each one is storing 10 files per projects and you can have a bunch of projects, that all adds up pretty quickly. And it's in their best interest to offload some of that to other platforms. Now, if you're using a file from SharePoint, you should be able to do that as well. But that's going to reduce the overhead that you're bringing to OpenAI. So they're going to encourage you to do that once it gets to a certain size. And I guess the other thing that I'd say is this changes weekly, right? Like OpenAI may offer a service now, it may change next week. They're trying to get people in here and using it. So I think that covers most of projects. You can have as many projects as you want. You can delete them. Um, this keeps all of the files within the project itself. So all of these have to do with what I've already talked about with the project. As opposed to GPTs and regular chats, they show up down here in chat, as opposed to within the projects themselves. Projects now, as of I think 2 weeks ago, can be shared internally, but they can only be shared internally if you have an enterprise or Teams plan. I don't believe you can share them internally with Pro. So there's another reason to get in that Teams or enterprise plan. And also, when you look at what you can store in here, you can store any files. And so again, if you are encouraging people on your team, attorneys, to have their own GPTs that they pay for personally, whatever files are here are going to go with them if they ever leave. And so it's just another reason to have control, have user control through the platform, so that you can manage those accounts. Any other questions on that, Steve?
Uh, Not that I see. Let me just check the Q&A. Okay, we do have a couple.
Okay.
Do you want me to ask these now, Chip?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. Paul Bird is asking if you start a project in GPT and decide to use Gemini, do you have to have the program start over to relearn?
I mean, they're not connected. So in that scenario, what I do, I usually go back and forth between Claude and ChatGPT the most. I just copy and paste the instructions and I make sure I move the same files over. But you will be starting over. Um, you can also copy and paste some of the conversations that you've had and save those as files. I find that the easiest way to navigate that seems to work the the best hybrid of working between what a computer can read and what a human can read is using a platform called Markdown, which is just a very, very simple way of having headers, H1s, H2s, and things like that, just like Word. But if you can export that into that format and then pull it in, then it will get to that context pretty quickly.
Okay, and we have another question. Can you please explain what Python code is and when we would want to utilize Python code instead of interacting with the web interface of ChatGPT or other LLMs?
Oh man, we got a good one. That's a great question. Um, so yes, kind of. So I'm not a developer, I would say, even though I do development now that it's become so readily available. Python is a development code, and it's a way to get a machine to understand something that we're sending along. So I think I'll cover a little bit of that when we get into custom GPTs. So let me get there, and I'll see if it answers the question.
Sounds good. And then are you also going to address tokens and limits? That's another
Um,
question that we have.
Yeah, so we can talk about that too. The vector store is a partial workaround around tokens and limits. If you are limiting out all the time, then you're probably a pretty aggressive, a pretty heavy user, and you're probably getting a lot of value out of it. And at that stage, I would think about stepping up your account. So depending on the platform that you use, it's usually going to run around $200 a month. But if you're using up all of your tokens and you need that compute power, then it's probably worth taking the next step up to a larger higher tier. Um, in terms of
We
tokens,
have some power users here, don't we?
it sounds like it. That's awesome.
Yeah, that sounds.
But in terms of tokens, I mean, I don't know off the top of my head what the limit is, but when you have a chat with ChatGPT, it is only going to remember so much of it. So if you continue the conversation forever, the old things that you talked about originally are going to start dropping off. Um, what Steve and I talked about a moment ago with vector stores. I'll show you what that looks like and how you can implement that. There's a little bit of a technical debt there that is required, but or investment. Um, but that doesn't get around those limitations, but it does give you a mechanism to um, kind of simulate a much larger data set that it can learn from. So let me start to show you what that looks like here.
Sure. Hey,
Um,
hey, Chip, I think Ginger wants to jump in real
oh, go
quick right
ahead.
now,
Perfect.
and then
Yeah, I figured now would be a good time, Chip. We're just going to take a quick break so I can bring in
Great.
a couple of our partners. And there's still so many good questions that I see that are coming in too. So don't worry, we will definitely get to all of those. You guys just keep them coming. We're going to take a quick break because I wanted to bring in one of our partners. His name is Blue with HMR. You guys have probably seen him at a lot of our seminars around the country. And Blue is just, he's incredible. He represents the company so well out of Scottsdale, Arizona. Although they work with clients all around the country. I believe you're in all 50 states now, right, Blue? Or close to it.
Yep, yep, just about, Ginger. I think we're in 49, so
What
close
what's
up.
the one you're waiting on? Which state? Do you know?
So Michigan, we don't do any funding in Michigan.
Uh-oh, Steve, we need to, I guess there's no way to do that then. It
yeah, well,
depends.
you know my office address if you want to start sending the cookie trays, okay, Blue? So,
I gotcha,
all
gotcha,
right.
Steve.
But anyway, Blue, we're excited to have you here with us, and I cannot wait to see you in 2 weeks at our Texas Depositions or Trial Seminar.
Yeah, obviously looking forward to that one, Ginger. I wait all year for this one. It's one of my favorites. Um, Hello, everyone. My name is Blue Edwards. I am with HMR Servicing, and who is HMR? HMR, we're essentially the premier funding source for personal injury plaintiff law firms nationwide. There's three funding types that I'm just like to touch on here briefly with everyone. First of which is going to be our bread and butter, which is medical funding. For the medical piece, we function currently in 39 states. I always like to bring that up to let everyone know that we do work with providers nationwide. So if you have providers you like to work with, obviously let me know. We'd love to work with them as well. The two other types of funding that we do offer, one is going to be the case cost funding piece. So experts, right? Life care planners, video recreation specialists, bringing someone in, to help you with your trial, whatever you need to shore up your case and go for that big win. If that becomes a heavy lift, a lot of the litigation firms that we do, that I work with, they have hundreds of cases that they're litigating, and that adds up fairly quickly. So if it does, please give me a call. Would love to chat with you about it. We do these on a single case basis. Everything is non-recourse. So if you have 5 cases that you want to use it on and 100 that you don't, that's fine. Give me a call. We'd love to chat, with you about it. The last piece is going to be the pre-settlement funding piece. So clients, right? Um, Typically this is the hardest time that they've ever had in their life, and they're dealing with maybe they can't work, but they still need to pay the mortgage, vehicle, whatever it may be, right? Living expenses, things like that. We also offer that as well. So again, if anybody has any questions, please feel free to reach out. I'll be sure to leave my contact in the message board. And Ginger, again, thank you so much. Connectionology is amazing, always so good to us over here at HMR, and we really appreciate you guys. So have a great day, everyone.
I know, right back at you, Blue. I cannot tell you how much we appreciate working with you. And I know Ted will be popping in here soon to do the coffee giveaway at the end of the webinar. So we always look forward to that as well. But look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks, and we're gonna have a great time out there in Texas.
Thanks, Ginger. See you
And
soon.
look, we have our other good friend, Patrick, is coming in from On Point Legal Nurse Consulting, who has been a nurse for over 20 years now. He actually will go out and usually when I'm speaking to him, he's out there at somebody's trial and he's helping, testify as an expert. And so I love hearing the stories and the cases that Patrick works on whenever he is traveling. I thought I used to travel a lot, but I don't think that's anywhere near as close as you now, Patrick. But we're so happy to have you with us today.
Well, thank you very much. And yes, I just got back from Michigan. I was in Chicago for work as usual. And last trial that came up was in Philadelphia, so that wasn't as far away. Home health trial, and it was very interesting. It was a $14 million verdict, which was pretty fantastic for the clients, of course, and everyone involved. Went on for about 5 years, so it was nice to finish that one up. But
Great
like
work.
Ginger said, my name is Patrick. I'm one of the directors over at OnPoint Legal Nurse Consulting and Expert Witnesses. A lot of you, we've worked with a lot of you guys. Connectionology, of course, is wonderful. So I just wanted to focus on some of the things specific to today's topic with AI. One of the things that we've implemented, took us several months to get it right, but I think we finally have it right with AI and our medical chronologies, record retrieval, and record organization. One of the biggest things, we always have a nurse that reviews it before it goes out to you guys. It's a 24-hour turnaround time for your records to be bookmarked and organized, medical chronologies. We're testing a new demand letter system. Hopefully we'll be able to roll that out soon. But the coolest part, as an expert like myself, really speeds up the process. We've asked some of our experts out there how much time it's saving when you get a fully organized record and a medical chart. It's saving about an average of 3 hours per case for the experts to go through the records to review. So big, plus on cost side, which is nice as always, and just it makes the job a little bit easier for the experts to go through these records. Some of the other things we do over at OnPoint, we have, of course, the world famous pain and suffering reports, which is a non-economic damage report. We do have 3 certified life care planners on staff that are available to put those together. We do have a case management department that is newer to us, where we have nurses nationwide that are following up on the life care plans for individuals, for injured victims out there. So the nurses are actually following and making sure that these wonderful life care plans are actually being followed, and that they have a resource and kind of an in-between person between, if they need home health or they need medical supplies, things like that. So we have a wonderful group of medical experts, nursing experts, and then of course we do a lot of behind the scenes stuff for you guys. So merit screens. We can help look at the case in the beginning, identify where standards of care have been deviated from, and kind of go through the whole entire process. We like to consider ourselves, extension of your staff. We're there to help. OnPoint is run by 3 nurses, myself, Ingrid, and Dawn. Dawn has been a nurse for 35 years. Ingrid has been with us for 40 years as a nurse. And so when you call or text or email, you're really getting an individual that has been in the business for a long time and willing to help. So I'll put my information, of course, in the chat box. Please reach out. Unfortunately, I can't make it to Dallas. It was for traveling reasons, and then, of course, I just got assigned to another trial on November 7th. So I apologize, but I'll be in Sun Valley for sure.
Well, don't worry. We will definitely FaceTime you while we're in Texas at the
Please do.
weddings.
Want to see Blue on the horse is all we're looking for. So
Yes. And I know Erin is coming out there from HMR as well. So we won't make you too jealous. Okay, Patrick?
please don't.
All right. Well, thank you for all that you do. And be sure to put your information in the chat box. Okay.
Will do. Thanks, everyone.
And then last but not least, one more minute, you guys. I wanted you to meet our wonderful partner. His name is Ryan with Fox AE. And you've heard us rave about this company too, because they do incredible like animations, graphics, demonstratives, and they are just so real. And one thing I really love about this company, and I know Ryan will mention it, is if you need some sort of graphic in a pinch, you can actually go to a really cool website called Fox Prime. And that's somewhere where you can get your graphics instantly download, kind of like Amazon. But Ryan, glad to have you with us today.
Yeah, thanks, Ginger. I'm in Houston right now. for an event, and I'll be back in 2 weeks, Fort Worth for Connectionology. So excited about that. But yeah, we've got a website where if you need ready to go animations and visuals, we do have a decent amount of stock options that are ready to go. I was going to say, I know this webinar is about AI. If you change the one letter to E instead of I, that's Fox AE. It stands for animated engineering. So we are the animation specialists for your personal injury cases. So really anything you're looking to show visually. If you need an accident reconstruction, if you got a slip and fall case, if you want to show mechanism of injury, any surgeries, any medical malpractice, we can help you do that. I do have a quick example that I wanted to pull up for you here. Let's see. You see my screen? I believe you should be able to.
Yep, that's great.
Awesome. So this is a good animation to show here just because we show a full injuries breakdown where the client had multiple injuries. And then we take a little bit of time to go into each one, focus in on what those injuries are. I'll speed it up just a little bit. So you can see here, this one is the brain injury. We take the cross sections of the imaging to show you where in the brain there's blood. And then we're able to show that in 3D. We can rotate it so that you can see clearly. And then we can take cross sections the other way and show you the injury as well. We do the same thing with the other injuries in the body where there's a wrist fracture, and there's some other fractures. We'll focus in on those. We can take any imaging that you have. We can overlay our animation or we can put it side by side. And this is just a summary of injuries. If you do want the mechanism of injury or like the event, anything leading up to the injury, we can animate that as well. But just gives you a good idea of some of the things we can do. Really, sky's the limit. We're fully custom. So what I always recommend is reach out to us. Let's have a conversation. I can show you some examples of work we've done that's similar to what you're looking for. And then we can go from there. But I'll put my information in the chat along with that link to the Fox Prime site. Yeah, let me know if you have any questions. Thanks,
Thank you
Ginger.
so
Just
much.
a quick, I've worked with Cody. I do a lot of brain injury, and I'll just say, I think your work with especially diffuse tensor imaging and PET scans is just leagues ahead of anyone else out there in terms of just how powerful it is. So you guys do great work.
Thank you.
I probably should,
a link to a
add the
DTI scan as well.
That would be great. I probably should add, there's absolutely no way we're going to finish with all the questions we're getting, but we're going to have to probably do one more hour with Chip. But I have one more for you, Chip, real quick, and then we're going to try and move through as much as we can today. But we have one more question, which is, can we completely trust that ChatGPT won't be using our work for its own purposes or selling our information and ideas?
I mean, only as much as we can trust the terms and conditions of any platform, right? I mean, we trust Microsoft to host our documents and our data. Everything is in the cloud. You know, are they in terms of trustworthiness of the company? I mean, I don't think that they're better or worse than other cloud providers. So, I mean, the answer is no, we can't completely trust them, but I think that we do more harm to ourselves by avoiding them than by utilizing them. I think that that transaction is more heavily valued uh, in our own use case and business case. Whereas if they were to take all that, scoop that up, you know, they've already trained the models, so they're not looking for a complete retraining. So no, we can't trust them, but we already trust them. So I think we need to continue to utilize the platform.
Thank you.
All right. So I'm going to pop back into my screen share. We're going to jump back into custom GPTs, or GPTs in general. So GPTs are kind of like pre-trained um, pre-trained models, and they're a little bit different than projects. But there's a lot of similar functionality there. So when we go in here and we create a new GPT, in a similar way, we can go in and we can make changes to that. If we create a new one, it looks a little bit like this. Um, we can go in here and we can have it create a picture for us. We can create it just with a prompt, and we can talk with it and make it better. But here again, we have an opportunity to give it purpose and context around what we're trying to do. And so this project actually started out with us trying to recreate our SOP library in a way that we'd get more interaction with it. And so I started to create it in a Word document that became unwieldy very quickly, because even though Word is theoretically meant to be a document where you write a book, it doesn't do well with book level things. And so I took it out of there, I put it in Markdown, and I started to write it. But then I thought, man, if I'm going to get into this and really do a thorough job and make it usable, I need to know what conflicts exist. I need to be able to do a gap analysis and really figure that out. And so I thought the best way to approach that would be to make a custom GPT, because a custom GPT can use more data to help me make decisions. And so just like in a project, I give it a name, I give it a description, and I give it instructions. That's key. I also can create here these conversation starters. So I wanted to anticipate how people on my team would interact with it and start talking with it. So I'm able to write these myself. I can upload files. And again, we have limitations on how many files we can. I think it's about 10 files, if I recall. I could choose which model. So this is where it gets a little bit beyond a project. I could choose the model and I could say, don't make a recommendation. Then it's going to generally default to GPT-5, but my users can decide. Or I can force a model choice. 4.0 is a reasoning model. So that's going to spend more time kind of diving into the premise of what you're asking it and formulating its answers. 4.1 is a non-reasoning model. So it's just usually going to answer faster without, quote unquote, thinking about it. But in this one, I don't want a recommended model. I want the user to be able to choose. And then I can limit or provide capabilities. I can do web search. I can turn this off if I want wholly answers only to come from my repository. Canvas, image generation, code interpreter, and data analysis. I usually leave these all on. And then lastly, we can do actions. And actions gets to something that looks a little bit codey. But the key here is this little line of text here. And so this is using JSON or YAML, which is not important, but this is hooking up to what we are going to talk about next, which is our vector store. And so with a custom GPT, we can have actions that pull in data from other places. Now, I'm not a developer. I don't write code. I had ChatGPT write this code for me, like I do with almost all of the code I write. But this was able to write the code for me and plug me into the vector store. And then when I use this now, I'm able to go back out to my custom GPT. I'm able to share my custom GPT internally. So if I go to privacy settings here, I can decide which third parties are allowed to have conversations. And I can also share it. I can share it internally or not. And I can share this externally as well. So custom GPTs we can send externally. But if I want to go in here and ask a question like, I have a client that is behind in there. This never happens, of course. I can ask a question of my SOPs and it will pop up this little confirmation box. I don't need to read it. I just say, yes, that's fine. Because I already know what it's built in to do. This is going and it's hitting that vector store. And now it's combing through a much larger volume of information. And so this takes a little bit of time. And again, and I think I touched on this, but it's not really combing the whole vector store. It's actually pulling based on that relational database, right? The ideas that are tied together. And so it now tells me, according to our invoicing and billing SOP, this is what we should do. Now, if we ask more complicated questions, it will string together the SOPs. And I can go in here and say, what was your source? And it came directly from the SOP library. And it came from this file specifically, and actually did pull a couple of different files. Now, if I want to do a comparison, I can actually open up my SOPs. I can go to finance, client, and billing. Somewhere in here. And I could find the words that where it came from. But as you can imagine, when we have this large volume of content, this is more than 10 files. The alternative would be to put it into a zip file, maybe upload that, put that in Dropbox. But then we lose something with that. We lose that vector store. And the vector store is not very interesting to look at. But the vector store lives here on OpenAI. Again, OpenAI is not just ChatGPT. ChatGPT is an OpenAI product, but all of these files live in here. Now, for this implementation, what I did was I built a different little piece of software that keeps this current. And so if you're going to build something like this, just be mindful that the only thing that you want in here are the current files that you've approved. You don't want to contaminate this with a draft or with something that maybe didn't get approved, because it's going to pull answers from all of this. And you can go in here and you can clean them up. You can delete the store. You can change the files and things like that. The way that I have this built, it's tied to this Markdown reader, and it's really plugged into GitHub, which lets me pull and push. So in this case, it pulled my 14 files. They're here now, but those will stay up to date. So any change I make in here, if I change a line, add a feature, even if I just add a space, and then I hit this whole vector store will get updated. And, like I said, I'm not a developer, but I was able to build this and launch it, and we use it now all the time because ChatGPT was able to write the code for us. Vector stores, I think the limit on OpenAI's platform is about 10,000 documents. And I want to show you one other example of what we built here. So we have a client who has a proprietary batch of documents that he's really curated over many years around traumatic brain injury. And so I created this TBI advisor, which is plugged into that. And so within this, we're able to go in and ask questions of that library. And so this tried to trick us. It didn't ask for that confirmation. And so this is doing some web searching, which I actually don't want it to do. But the nice thing is we can catch it in the act and stop it and force it. So if it doesn't do this little pop-up, we know it didn't actually hit the vector store. And again, AI will lie to you. So it's good to build in some of these little features so that they stop you for a second. So this is going to hit the 4,000 files that are in there. Vector stores can parse PDFs. They can parse a lot of different file types. So it's not just text. And again, this is easy to set up. We go into OpenAI, to the dashboard, to their storage, to vector stores. We can create a new one right here. We can title it anything we want. And then we can use this right here to tell the platform that we're working with where it is and how to use it. Once we have one set up, it's easy to set up multiple. So a lot of times people will need help getting the first one set up. But then once we can show them, hey, this is how you can add more, now we can start to have specialized vector stores depending on what we're doing. But I like to use them anytime we have more than 10 files, anytime we want a source of truth, and anytime we want to try to maintain that. And so next from there, I actually want to circle back just for a second. So we started off with some deep research, and now we're kind of back to basic functionality in ChatGPT. And I skipped this for a little bit because this takes about 10 minutes to run. But Steve asked the question, what's the impact of level 5 autonomous vehicles on legal and insurance sectors? This has now done a deep dive into that topic. It's given us responses. It's given us answers to, what it thinks, but it's pulling resources like McKinsey, Wired article, QZ.com, and it's providing a pretty meaningful information dump. Now, again, I'm skeptical of these sources, and I would want to go in and open these to make sure that they're accurate, or double check them in some other way. But generally speaking, deep research is usually pretty accurate. The quotes that they provide are usually correct. Just continue to have that sense of skepticism. And then at the bottom, it's going to give us all the sources here, so we can go in and read these. These are almost always going to be publicly available sources because that's all it can crawl. Next, I want to touch on Agent Builder. So now that we're able to build projects and now that we're able to build custom GPTs, we do those things comfortably. The next thing that we want to be able to do is start to string those things together. Now, there's multiple different ways to do that. Gemini, Claude, they provide some different ways to do that as well. ChatGPT just came out with what they call the Agent Builder, and it runs a little slow. But what Agent Builder and ChatKit allows us to do is it allows us to string together some of these functions. And so when you think of, oh, great, it's not responding. When you think of, let me start it over. When you think of working with a person and giving them a job to do, oftentimes that job is not just, hey, answer this question for me. It involves multiple steps. And so as you use ChatGPT, as you use the LLMs more and more, you'll find that there are a series of questions that you may ask one after the other, and that becomes repeatable. And that's where a tool like Agent Builder lives. There's others called like, I think it's Pipedrive or Pipeline. Allows you to do something similar, but this is directly from ChatGPT, and I tried to keep my materials just from platforms that you're probably already paying for. So if you go into OpenAI, openai.com, you sign in, you go to your dashboard, in the same place where you'd find storage, assistance, places where you can do some of these uploads where your API keys are. We have Agent Builder, and Agent Builder allows us to do a number of different things. Actually, I'll start with a simple example. So a friend of mine, they lost their job. They wanted a little help trying to find a new one. And so I went in here and I made a simple job search bot that would go through the 3 steps that seemed like a part of finding a new job. So first is the job seeker, the job searcher. That goes out and it pulls in a bunch of jobs based on the user's query. So the user has to start a conversation with them, and they say, I'm looking for a job in Holland, Michigan, for example. The job searcher goes out and tries to find some of those roles. Now, we could be specific there just like we would in a search, and it pulls those back. And then it hands off the information that it gets through that first query to the next one, which I called the hiring agent stalker. And that one goes out and it tries to find whoever the hiring agent or the person doing the hiring might be. And it builds basically a dossier on them. It builds like a packet to say, here's who we think it is. Maybe here's the board member, here's the boards that they sit on. Here's what they do in their spare time, whatever's publicly available. And then it takes the output from these 2 things and it feeds it back into a resume coach. And now it takes the resume that we already have uploaded and it goes through and it says, hey, you might want to highlight this volunteer work that you did because this is associated with something that the hiring manager is passionate about. It's going to pull some of the brand voice and the language from the company that they're applying to, and it's going to weave that into the cover letter and into the resume builder, and then it's going to deliver it on the other end. So this one is very simple. It's just stringing 3 agents together. Something like this, we're just starting to roll this out internally. And so with this, we can input content either that we had ChatGPT build or that we built ourselves. We feed it off to this agent. This agent then goes through an if-else process and says, if this is for LaFleur marketing, if this is for team financial, where does it go? So if it's if it's our own, it sends it to this agent. This agent then makes it choose if it's a blog post, a social post, an email. And if it's a blog post, it goes to the LaFleur editor, which edits for brand voice, positioning, strategy, hands it off to the SEO, the geo and performance editor this is going to apply everything that came out of the first prompt, and it's going to have new instructions here. Both of these are then also tied to a vector store, which has a bunch of our materials already built into it. Lastly, it's going to go to a formatting agent that's going to take the output of these two, which usually has some content in there that we don't need, like editor's notes from the previous bots. Clean that up, give us a clean file that we can then copy and paste onto our blog. We always have a human edit it even after that. But it helps us move through this process. And so when we think of, areas of the business where we have these repetitive things, if there's decisions to be involved, we can do that. And what's different about this and what's new about this is this kind of logic used to require a lot of development. And now there's something that looks kind of like code here, but it will write this for us. If we create a new if else piece here, we can go in here and start to ask for it to write it for us. We can use ChatGPT to write it for us. And we can build these tools without having to do it from scratch. And so these things all come together. Now, in this instance, we do actually have to we do have to have a user interface for it. But this is that user interface right here. And so if we pop in, actually, let me do this. If we pop in some content here, we're able to have this go through all of these steps, and it will go and it will understand who it belongs to, what the content is, and it will define where it goes. And so unlike in the past where we'd have to write these very specific statements to say if it looks like this, then that. If I go to our own website and I go to a blog post and I copy it, I'll go to a client story actually. We can actually follow it along and see how it's working through these different steps. So it starts with this agent here. This was a client story for us, and it says, who does this belong to? Oh, this belongs to LaFleur Marketing. All I had to know was that our name is in it here, found that, and it pointed in the right spot. It's probably struggling with this one a little bit because it's too short for a blog post. Maybe not. It decided it was a blog. Now it goes to that editor. The editor follows the instructions within the editor to make sure that this aligns with our brand standards. And it will go through and start to come up with an answer. Maybe, or this one might have an error. But normally it will run through and then go through the Geo SEO editor, go back to the formatting agent, and then pop out from there. Then we can use this and we can plug this in wherever we want.
Yeah,
Now, go
Chip,
ahead, Steve.
we had an attendee ask a question that I think 150 other people are thinking right now, which is like, can normal people do this? Like, can lawyers do this? It seems pretty complicated.
So, I mean, I think the answer is yes, because you can ask ChatGPT to help you with this whole process. The most complicated part of this is just putting this into an interface, right? But almost any web developer can take an hour or two and say, hey, I want you to put this output into here. And they can make this. This is the hardest part right here. Just making the chat box is the hardest part. But you can go into ChatGPT, go to the dashboard, go to the agent builder, and you can start building this out. And if you build out this logic and preview it, all of this requires no code. The closest thing to code is in this if else statement here, but you can string together all the agents that you want and never have to touch a line of code. And it's all included in the platform that you're already paying for, most likely. So yes, I think this is very accessible. Now, if you use this and you preview it and you test it and you share it out with other attorneys in the firm and they all say, oh my gosh, I want to use this. Well, then hire a developer to create this part of it and put it behind a login. Um, but it's the thinking process that goes into building out what you're trying to replicate here that has the most value. The execution, I don't think it should cost more than $1,000 to get this part built and put behind a login.
That's great. Thank you.
You're welcome. And their documentation is outstanding. And also, you can use tools to build things out. And so I don't want to get too far into things that are going to be difficult to implement. But if you want to try your hand at building out some of these things yourself, we have tools out there. This one's called Cursor. Um, and we won't spend a lot of time here because it does get a little web developer-y. But if you only focus on over here, as we were talking and as we were going through this presentation, I wanted to let this autonomous vehicle report finish. So as this was finishing, I just put in here and said, create a website with this. And I copied it and I pasted it in here. And then I let it run. And it did all of the running. And it was running for quite a while. And the break was kind of nice because I was able to see it was still working. And then out of that came this little website based on the question that Steve asked earlier, right? Level 5 autonomous vehicles. And so all I did was give it a directory and say, hey, create this. Now there's some other pieces that show up in this file. Over here, there's files, but just focusing on this chat window here, I just said, make this thing. And this was my prompt right here. Create a website, user friendly. And then I copied and I pasted the output from that deep research. And then it did everything else. And it came up with this site, which is meant to answer Steve's question. So 2025, here's where we are. 2030, it's going to update. So we have a full user interface. We have an easy way to share some information. And this was just all put together using a couple of prompts, um, and then having the system build it. And so that's kind of the last thing that I want to touch on is that, ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, all of those things work and live and exist in their own platform. Where we really start to get some mileage and really start to get some traction with them is when we start to use these connectors. And then also when we start to use, some of these third party platforms that are using ChatGPT and others. And so, like for example, in here, this is using either Claude, ChatGPT 5, or some of the other models. Again, that's what I'm already paying for, right? So I don't expect anyone to go and build out a site like this, but just so that you're aware, this is the sort of thing that can be created very quickly. And if we use our imaginations, if we want to get this in front of a focus group or do some things there, we can start to pull this. And this has got it's not perfect, right? It's broken, but we're able to use ChatGPT to get us from here to there, and just using the tools that we covered here, plus a little bit of cursor.
Well, I'm really, really glad that it's saying 2045 and 2060 because I'm pretty sure I'm not going to be an agent builder for ChatGPT like you are. But if you don't mind, send that to me when when the webinar's over.
For sure.
This is fantastic, Chip.
Awesome. So that concludes what I had planned on covering. I'm happy to try to answer questions.
So, Chip, we have a few more questions, but I wanted to ask you, not to put you on the spot, but we have 150 people on right now that are really interested in this. For the 4 or 5 different areas that you covered today, would you be willing to do a part two where the attendees ask specific areas where they want your help with?
Of
And
course.
you do that in real time, showing how we can build some of the tools that you've gone over. So it's not just theory, but we could take, practical issues that attendees have and
That
show how to
that
build these tools that you're using.
that's my favorite thing to do. I love doing that. So yes, I would
And
always be happy to do that.
and I love when you get all mad scientist on us. So that would be fantastic. That'd be great. All right. So we have a few questions that I haven't gotten to yet. So one is from Philip, who's asking, is there an area you would go to or recommend for the attendees for tutorials on more specific training and how to use AI?
Oh man, AI is the answer to that question, I think. There are some emails that I subscribe to. I think Reddit has some good communities that really do a great job explaining how to use this stuff. There's a couple of email subscriptions that I subscribe to that kind of talk about what's bleeding edge and what's really out there right now. But for the most part, I think talking with AI about what you can do with AI works incredibly well. They're making sure that these models are built out and up to date. So I think just spending some time in there and I didn't touch on this, but when I think of working with AI, I try to throw at the big problem first. And I think our tendency is we look for AI to replace something that we're used to. And so AI has a structure and a function that looks a lot like Google. And so we try to tackle something and then we go to Google to find an answer for a small part of the problem. Um, if we're building something, I'm missing a part, what should I do? If we're making a recipe, I'm missing this ingredient, what should I replace it with? But if we start with that bigger problem, I need to feed my family dinner tonight, then we will get answers that will be much more novel and much more interesting and will help us to get to solve the problem. And so, the jobs to be done mentality, which is a great strategy to try to work through as we're thinking about our business. People don't hire us to help us get a settlement after a car wreck. People hire you, not us, I'm not an attorney. People hire you because um, they've been harmed and they want to go about living their lives and live as complete of a life as they can. They don't hire you to try to fix a car wreck that they were in. And so when we can think of that job to be done, I think that framework works well for chat and for AI as well. Throw the biggest problem that you have, or throw the big problem that you're trying to solve for, and then drill down. If you're stuck in a spot, then sure, follow that down. But when it comes to figuring out how to use AI, explain what you're trying to solve, and then it will start sending you down the path towards solving it. And it may be building out a vector store and an integration there, but it may be something novel that you haven't thought about. And the AI will help you build that thing, and help you get to where you want to go.
So, because you also run a very successful digital marketing agency, and that's, obviously how I know you, um, I'm curious, how is AI, these large language models, affecting your clients who, in terms of acquiring clients,
Hmm.
who used to be using search, the SERP results, Google Maps, Map Pack, LSAs, what have you? How many of them are not showing up now because people are just going directly to
Yeah.
ChatGPT? And what are you telling your clients so that they are not going to be losing all their clients right now that they're getting from the internet?
Yeah. I mean, it's a disruptive period for sure, but it's not like there are fewer injury attorneys. So that pool has stayed about the same size. It's not that there are more or less people who have been injured. And so as long as that's the case, investing in building your brand, investing in your community, in doing the things, it's almost like we're going a little bit backwards towards things that have worked well historically, right? And so online, we need to use these tools to give ourselves as much of a competitive advantage as we can. And sometimes that means creating more content. But if that content doesn't speak to the heart of why the firm does what they do and how they're trying to help people, if it doesn't tell that brand story, then you're not going to compete well. So there's a glut of just junk content that's being put out on the internet. People call it the enshittification of the internet because there's just so much content.
It's a great
Um,
YouTube video, by the way.
yeah, yeah. So go somewhere else. Sponsor your little league. Um, get out and build your community. And this part of my take on that actually came from your presentation in Nashville. And there's a confluence of things happening. AI is taking over. PE is entering the market. Private equity is trying to find ways to scoop up law firms. We have these huge national law firms that are filling the highways here in Grand Rapids. I see them all the time with Michigan jerseys.
Yeah.
They're not from Michigan, and so they're pouring money in. Well, you show up somewhere where they can't do that, right? AI is very scalable and it does help, and we use it, but we're also trying to tell our clients like you have to tell your story of who you are and you have to be present in your community. And so do some of the things that you may have put on pause before. Join the chamber, join the local Rotary. Be present and focus on your brand. Help people understand the story that you bring to the table, and that's who they want to hire. AI can help you. AI can help you um, amplify that story, and if it's done really well, but if it's done poorly, then it dilutes it terribly.
So
And
are
yeah.
you making those recommendations though because people are going to be less likely to find a lawyer in the SERP search engine results, or more likely because these large language models are emphasizing brand?
The large language models are emphasizing brand, right? They're trying to solve the problem for the user. And in order to solve the problem for the user, they want to see that you are reputable. It's that whole EAT model that Search was using, right? They want to see that you're reputable. They want to see that you have answers, that your answers are based on something concrete, and they want to see that you have the authority to speak. And so I think investing in that brand in turn helps you show up better in those citations, which is what AI is using to populate the answer. Now, Google is still early stage in the way that they're doing that, but more and more we're seeing those citations are bringing along this is who said it and here's who came. Now, the strategy there is different. More and more we're looking to answer the questions people are asking. Whereas before it used to be, if we can rank for personal injury lawyer Grand Rapids, that's
Mhm.
great. That's still great, but you're not getting the traffic that you were getting from that most likely. What you are getting the traffic from is my neck still hurts and it's a month after I was in a car wreck. What should I do? Well, if you can provide that answer, now they're going to take a more direct path to your website. But even if they don't get to your website, they know that you're the person who tried to answer that question. So you're using your empathy to understand and to identify the questions that are going to come, and other tools, of course, too. But answer those questions that are helping people solve their problems. So it's almost like the inverse, right? If we bring our big problems to AI to try to solve, how do we do the same for our clients, right? Understand the problem that they're bringing to the internet or to the engine to try to find an answer to and help them answer that question. And that seems to be a more effective strategy.
So an attendee just asked in the Q&A, a really good question, which is a follow-up to what you just said, Chip, which is, so what would they do? What would you recommend? Um, Let me rephrase it. How would ChatGPT help a layperson find a lawyer then? Where are these large language models getting their data?
I mean, they're crawling the internet all the time, right? When you launch a new site, if you use Cloudflare or something like that, you can turn off and say, "Don't crawl my site," which don't do that. For a public-facing attorney site, leave that on. But they're crawling your site. They're crawling every site that's out there, and they're adding to that model. And so, your content on your site still matters. Make sure that that it has authority, right? Make sure it's you're citing the resources that you want to share. Where did it come from? And make sure you have that kind of chain of custody. If you make a claim, make sure that you can back it up. Um, and that's where I guess where I would start. I don't know if that answers the question.
It does. I mean, it's a whole nother webinar in itself, that question. But okay, Chip, I told you ahead of time, but I do have to tap out. Unfortunately, I do have to be somewhere at 5 o'clock. I am tapping in the great Ginger Jerk to replace me right now for these last few questions. And I just want to thank you personally. I think this webinar was just terrific.
Awesome.
Thank you
Thank
so
you so
much.
much, Steve.
All
Appreciate
right.
it. Take
You take
care.
care, my friend.
Awesome. Thanks, Steve.
Thanks,
We'll
you
see you
too.
soon, okay?
Bye-bye.
And yes, Chip, if you don't mind, we've got a few more questions that have
Of
come in.
course.
And then I'm going to bring in my dear friend Sam from Strategic Relationships to share a little bit about what he does. And actually, I might as well do that now, and then we'll still take in a few more questions. But Sam is coming in, you guys, from Strategic, very cool company that can go out there and find ex-employees. I have heard story after story about all of the cool things that Sam and his company does, and it just blows my mind because some of these people that he can find, they will help change the entire case that you have. I'll let Sam tell you all the good details.
Thanks, Ginger. Yeah, hey guys, I'm Sam Littrell with Strategic Relationships. And really, what we do is we work with complex cases, helping you guys track down former employees of the companies that you're suing. And we turn those folks into insiders and whistleblowers. What that really means is here and then we do what we call it skip tracing. However, what we really are doing is finding the people that you think exist or you believe exist, but you don't really know who they are. And how we do that is really simply by asking you three questions. What's the name of the company you're looking into? what job titles are going to hold relevant knowledge for your case, and when would they have worked there. And what we do with that information is we actually make a list for you of those people that meet those criteria. We can either give you that information, or we can then interview those folks and really gather the information and learn from them. So we do cases kind of all across the board with just really tracking down these insiders who could hold some pretty damaging information on your defendants. I'm actually here in Boston right now at the AIEG conference with some product liability attorneys. But we work on product liability cases. We do trucking cases, nursing home cases, negligent security, really anything where you think maybe some former employees could come in, talk about how the maybe what the defense counsel was saying isn't true. We can help find those folks who have that information. So I'll put my stuff in the chat and look forward to working with you guys.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Sam. And we'll see you back here very soon, okay?
Yeah, see ya.
In fact, I think we're going to be seeing your dad and several people in Texas in about 2 weeks. So we're looking forward to that. But thank you for all that you do. Keep up the good work. And again, I hope everybody watching will definitely save Sam's information because at some point in your career, you're probably going to want to call him because he, like I said, he can find people. It's pretty cool.
Thanks, Ginger.
And speaking of finding people, Chip, I don't know if you've ever heard of this other company I wanted to mention real quickly, because I saw a question come in from Michael Templeton, and I believe this is the same Michael, I hope, that works for Barrister Analytics, which is such a cool company that basically they also help find information about people, which means like I think they're social media intelligence agency. And these guys that work there, including Michael, were like former FBI, DEA agents. And I mean, their story is incredible. I would just say go to their website and check them out. But I always get excited about companies like this that can find things. So I figured it might help somebody out who's watching. But anyway, I want to get back to a question real quick, Chip. And I don't know if you've answered this one yet from Michael, but he said, please discuss the ongoing trend for courts to require a Daubert hearing to challenge experts and their testimony if they used LLMs like ChatGPT to review raw data or to help them generate an expert opinion report. Do you know anything about that?
I mean, I know very little about, I mean, I know what ChatGPT just told me about that over the last 30 seconds. So, I mean, I'd love to help with that, but it's not an area of my expertise.
That is very cool. And speaking of ChatGPT, I actually have used it where I asked it to create a bio for myself one time because I needed it for an event. Because remember, we were talking about how we don't usually like to talk about ourselves, but it was the most perfect bio. I couldn't have written it any
Hmm.
better. And it was
Awesome.
100% accurate.
That's awesome.
So, but anyway, speaking about each other, can you do me a minute and or do me a favor and just talk real quickly about the company that you created at LaFleur and tell people a little bit about what you guys do over there?
Sure. Also my least favorite part, but I started LaFleur marketing about 11 years ago. And we just decided to lean in. You know, I came from the agency world and I'd worked at a number of different agencies prior to that. And, you know, I got frustrated, one, you know, on purpose, like what are we doing and how are we helping people? I lucked out and I got a wonderful, very, very good friend and partner in San Antonio, Tom Crosley, who runs Crosley Law Firm down there. He and I started working together, I want to say 2 agencies ago. And I was lucky enough to sit down and talk to the people that he had helped. And working in an agency, there was so much um, industry knowledge that you had to pick up very quickly. And it's kind of the iceberg, right? Like you see the little top of the iceberg and you think, oh, I know what this is about. But as with all areas, there's always much more below the surface. And so I decided early on that we wanted to really focus on professional services, you know, specifically injury law, in the legal world. And so we started doing that about 11 years ago. And then, you know, I've always been a very technology, um, I'm excited by technology. I love learning new things. And so, you know, as we've iterated and changed through the years, this has just kind of become an additional thing that we had to wrap our heads around and start to build. So I feel like I'm back kind of on my home turf. Like this is what I like to do. is figure out how to make these tools work and build and grow them. And so we're based here in West Michigan. We have a couple people down in Columbia who have joined our team recently, but that's what we've been doing ever since. So we've been trying to help injury lawyers grow their client base. And then most recently, we've shifted our positioning a little bit, really as a growth engine partner. And so much we found that, the application and the use of the tools that we're passionate about can go and solve other problems. And so, like that TBI vector store that we talked about, the challenge was taking so much time to get the answers that we need and prepare documentation to send to defense. Well, I showed my client what we're doing with our SOPs, and they said, "Well, can we apply this somewhere else?" And so more and more, we're just working with our clients to help them maximize the revenue. Often that includes marketing, and that's a central part of what we do. But now more and more, we're helping to build tools to help them solve problems, and that's been really fun.
Well, I tell you what, you guys do amazing work over there, and I'm so glad that you're doing this and helping so many people out now. I definitely want to make sure that everyone has your contact information after this webinar so they can stay in touch. And then also, I know a lot of people have been already asking for a copy of your slides, so I will make sure that they get a chance to email you directly so they can stay in touch and get a copy of those.
Perfect.
Um,
Awesome.
Also, in addition to that, we will post this on the Connectionology YouTube channel so that way everybody can refer back to it and then share it with their colleagues too. I believe there's one more question. And again, forgive me if this one's already been asked, but Sherman wanted to know if you can ask numerous questions in a project, can you file 10 documents with one question and 10 more with another question in the same project?
Yeah, so I think let me just go back to screen share here. So um, in a project, we can load up these files here. These live with the project at the project level, but we can always add more files. When we go in and start a chat, we can go here and we can add photos and files right here. And then we could pick whatever photos we want to add. But those photos will be specific to that chat. So yes, we can add, I think it's 10 files here at the project level, but then we can add individual photos to the individual chat itself. So these usually are going to be more specific to what we're trying to answer.
Okay, fantastic. All right, well, that is all the questions that we have as at least of right now. And before we head out today, Chip, I brought in our special friend, Ted Mullis from HMR, who's going to do the special coffee giveaway. And Ted, I wish we had coffee that we could give everybody, but we only have one winner that we can announce for today. And if you're not going to win, don't worry because there's another chance on Thursday because we have all three Romanos coming in to do a special webinar on voir dire. Hope I said that right. But we got John Romano, Eric Romano, and Todd all in one place where they will be speaking to you guys about that special topic. And you can sign up at connectionology.com to watch that one. But Ted has probably been on just as many webinars as I have, you guys. So I've let him off the hook a few times, but he's here today to share with you guys who the winner is. And they're going to win 2 bags of freshly roasted. Is it still the
Costa Rican terrazzo.
Yep, and a special HMR mug too.
Yeah.
So, all right, Ted. Well, who's the lucky winner today?
So it's I'm excited to announce it's Rob Wilder out of Charlotte, North Carolina. So just down the street from me a bit. I'm out in Virginia, so
Oh,
congratulations.
fantastic, Rob. Well, I guess both you and I, we can reach out to him after this webinar to make sure that he gets this special coffee. Thank you for being here to announce this, Ted. And do you have any announcements you'd like to make?
I think that's it for right now. So it's just I love this webinar, so I was watching it as well. I'm still trying to figure all the neat things that you can do with AI out as well. So I use ChatGPT some, and then Claude, and there's StoryBrand and some others that are out there that are kind of neat for writing. So this is just fascinating.
Well, I think we need to
So
have
thank you,
Chip
Chip.
back for part two
Yeah.
so we can go into those live questions because I love that idea, Chip, where you could just go through and tell, show people exactly how to do these things.
I'd love to do it. That sounds great. I mean, part of the motivation for doing this is just to try to help people get the basics right. There are so many platforms. I mean, they're just inundated. You go to a conference and everybody's got an AI platform.
Mhm.
But what can you just do with the products that are out there? And the more you understand what AI can and can't do, I think the safer you are. You're not going to buy a platform that makes some wild claim, um, because because basically you understand how it works, right? And you understand what can and can't go on top of it. So it's been super, super fun, and I'd be happy to do that.
All right, well, looking forward to it. And is there anything else that you'd like to mention or share before we head out today?
No, thank you everyone for taking the time. I appreciate it.
All right. Well, I'm sad that this is over, Chip. It was an honor to have you with us. Loved having Steve and all of our partners with us today. I love seeing you guys' comments. It looks like everybody really enjoyed the webinar today, Chip, and definitely looking forward to doing another one of these. And also, I'm so happy that Michael Templeton put his information in the chat. Um, I just get so excited about the companies we work with. We work with, I was telling you this earlier, Chip, we work with such great people. And it's wonderful how everybody does their part in helping each other. So thank you to everybody watching, and thanks for supporting everyone that we work with. That is all that I have. I will see you guys back on Thursday. Hope you have a great afternoon. And again, thank you guys for your sweet comments. I will email you in a few minutes so that way you can stay in touch with Chip, with Steve, and all of our partners at OnPoint, Fox AE, Strategic, and HMR too. Until then, you guys have a great afternoon. Bye, everyone. See you soon.